It is 90.7 WCLH, your home for Metal Mondays. And that was track number 4 off of Dokken's 1999 release, Erase the Slate, with the song Drown. And now, as I mentioned before in the show, I have the pleasure of welcoming singer, songwriter, producer, frontman, and my all-time favorite artist, Don Dokken. Don, how you doing?
Hi, kiddo. How you doing, Kendall?
I'm doing great. Groundbreaking interview for myself, and if people listen to my show often in Wilkes-Barre, they might know that as well.
Cool. I think we're playing back here in Wilkes-Barre pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely. You've been touring a lot recently. Probably, is it a little too much, or do you enjoy all this touring going on?
It's been a pretty busy year. Of course you get worn down. Plus, we've been hopping back and forth across the pond, as they say it, England, Germany, France. But, it's, as I say, it's either do this or I have to get a job.
Yeah.
I don't want to work.
And your last show that you did was in Beverly Hills, California, just this Saturday. How was that show?
It's fun. It's called the Saban Theater. It was built in the 30s, one of those old Art Deco, movie theaters converted to a concert venue. And it's nice. It's pretty, and it's big stage, big lights, big PA. It was a little rough. The Scorpions were playing the same night, so I ran into some of those boys after the show, and we hung out at the Rainbow and said, hey, how you doing? And so it was a nice evening.
Great. So you'll be heading over to Penn's Peak in Jim Thorpe, PA, this Saturday, October 14th, and that's a really nice venue, too. Have you ever played there before?
Yeah, I love that venue. It's really nice. Good PA, good lights, big stage. Everybody can see well. I like those venues when it's nice and set up properly.
Yeah, and even the next day on Sunday, you'll be at the Chance Theater in New York, and that's personally my favorite venue. And also, I don't know if you've played there before, but it's definitely more of an intimate setting and smaller, but I feel that's a better show experience.
Yeah, everybody can see up close, and that's what we call a cleanup date. So, you're already back east, and you got a day off. You're thinking, well, let's just grab a show and, in a smaller venue on the way home, because we're flying out of New York. So we thought we'll just take a quick drive up to Poughkeepsie and do a show. And we played there before many times. Yeah, that's a place that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, cool. In terms of Dokken mostly playing, I think, in California, because that's where you're located, do you notice any difference when you come over to, say, the Northeast, PA, and New York, in terms of the atmosphere or even the fans?
Yeah, I would have to be honest that, the LA fans are a little bit spoiled because it's such a big city and there's a concert like every weekend.
Yeah.
So, some of these cities we play, they don't have shows every week. So people see a concert coming through town, be it Dokken or someone else, and they're more enthusiastic. So, LA, like you said, Scorpions were playing that, and other night we were playing, Megadeth was playing. Every weekend in LA there's a big show. So I think the fans get a little spoiled in LA.
Yeah, and I agree that also I'm very excited for the show come this Saturday. So in terms of Dokken news, you guys have a new DVD coming out later this year, early next year, with a new single. And there's been talk of a new album for 2018, and this is all relatively new, and I know you've discussed it a lot on different outlets, but other than what you've said, has there been any updates since?
Well, we just finished the DVD from the Japan tour with the original members, with George and Jeff. We filmed it, recorded it, so that's all done. It's edited. The footage is edited. The album is mixed. I don't know when it's coming out. We haven't delivered the product yet. We're probably delivering all the artwork, and making DVDs is really a lot of work. You have to embed the codes and make chapters and artwork and all that stuff. So, but that's getting done, and then we're booked until December. I have like 6 shows. I'm taking the month of January off to start making a new Dokken record.
Awesome, and that's great to hear. And based on that, this will actually be the first Dokken album that I will experience in, say, picking it up for the first time, because I hadn't actually bought music until I graduated high school in 2013. So I'm very excited to hear that there is another Dokken album in the making. So in terms of that, I know I've heard that you've said you're not very much of a social media guy, and since this is my first time going to be buying an album for the first time while it's released, I want to know your opinion on the way music is released these days. Since I'm unfamiliar with the previous releases, did you ever do anything in terms of, say, a pledgemusic.com and how bands offer certain packages to fans to make a different experience?
No, never. I've never got involved with the whole pledge music and give special VIP packages and give me $50, I'll shake your hand, and I just don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm old school. In the 80s, you made a record. It was a, vinyl, and you did all the magazines. There were tons of rock magazines back in the 80s and 90s. Cream magazine, Circus, Hit Parader. God, there's a tons of them. So you do the interviews, and then they would fly me around the country for weeks, going to every radio station in different states and do morning talk shows or midnight metal shows, and then you hop on a plane, you go to Europe, and but usually I go to Paris or something, or Prague, and then you just stay there for 4 days, and then all the journalists from all the countries in Europe, from Italy, Spain, France, you name it, they'd all come, and we do like these interviews, you just sit there with 30 journalists and you do a question and answer thing, and that's how we used to do it. But now, there are no more physical. They call it physical media. Physical being you can't touch it anymore. It's a digital download, iTunes, iPod. CDs have gone by the way, as they did cassettes and records, and it's just a niche thing now. We just released all our records on vinyl, reissued them in the last year or so, but it's just a different world. The internet had, people don't realize, like you're young, the internet hasn't been around that long. There was no internet in the 90s, just per se. You couldn't, it's only really been around in the last 15 years. So the world changed, and there's no more stores. How do you go buy a CD? You have to go on Amazon.com now, or Target, so the world's changed. So we have to rethink this next record, how to market it, how to get it out to the people, get it on Facebook, get it on social media, get it on Spotify and all that stuff.
Yeah, and definitely the industry has changed, but I do appreciate how you and Dokken keep it old school in that matter. And, of course, bands offer meet and greets and everything, but I know I met you back in June, and you seem to just be okay with meeting all the fans after shows and such. So once again, I'm on the phone with Don Dokken of Dokken on 90.7 WCLH in Wilkes-Barre. And Don, even though I mentioned I didn't start buying the records until a couple of years ago, I definitely have a collection as of now, and part of that happens to be your 2012 release, Broken Bones, which is your latest. And in terms of offering more, something I very much enjoyed about that release physically is the fact that you had a DVD with it that you kind of went through with John and described all the tracks. And do you feel that doing this is kind of, in a way, also old school, but giving the fans a bit more as well?
Yeah, I like the way to do things that way, and I had fun explaining the track by track. The new Dokken DVD we did in Japan, we've got like hours and hours of backstage footage of sitting on the bullet train and going to Yokohama and Hiroshima and Osaka, and all that footage we're kind of editing right now so people can get kind of a behind-the-scenes look at what we do, what we go through. And I think that's the way to do it myself. And like you said, as far as meeting fans, I know it's very popular now that bands, charge these packages to go to the sound check or meet the band, and I don't know. I'm not into that. I'll shake anybody's hand. I'll say hi to anybody. They don't need to give me money for that. I'm just a musician, I just don't roll that way. Yeah. Not that I'm knocking any other band that wants to do that. It helps pay the tour costs. Touring is expensive, you got a tour bus, couple $1,000s a day. You got a driver, you got gas, you got crew, you got hotels. It's expensive to tour these days. And so I understand how people are trying to supplement. But I just believe in just playing the concert and winning the fans one at a time through the performance. And that's just where my head's at.
Awesome. And speaking of that concert, once again, you'll be here in northeastern Pennsylvania, Penn's Peak, on this Saturday, October 14th. And I've seen you, Dokken, play twice, once in New York, and last time you were at Mount Airy Casino, so people listening probably were at that show in the Poconos back in 2015. I kind of want to go into your set list. Something that I very much enjoyed about your set is that you started with Empire from Broken Bones, and I've noticed, being more of a hardcore fan, that of course you start off with an audio of Without Warning, and I think most fans would think, hey, we're going to break out into Tooth and Nail, and I feel like there's kind of a statement with you going into Empire. Is that more of like me just thinking of it too much, or is it just because that is your latest release and you're promoting some of your new material?
Both. It's our newest song. I don't want to open the show with a 35-year-old song. And I like Empire. I think the song made a statement. I wrote about war and Syria and what was going on and how ridiculous war is. It's just an insane thing to do. But and it's a cool song. It's up tempo and I like it. But every night we change it. We don't just do the same show every night. We always talk in the dressing room and say, what do you guys want to play tonight? You want to play this? You want to play that? And we got a lot of songs. We try to get a couple deep tracks in there, like Mattis Hatter, which people might not know unless you're a hardcore fan. We got that. Other night, we opened up with Don't Close Your Eyes, which is a deep track. It wasn't a video, so it just depends what mood we're in.
Yeah, definitely. And if people were listening to AOM right here, where I'm playing Erase the Slate, they just heard previously Mattis Hatter, and that was one of my favorite moments of seeing you guys last year in New York. It was at the Rockin' Derby. The fact that you added that into your set, and I enjoy hearing more of the tracks that aren't played as much. So speaking of Erase the Slate, I'd like to touch on that since that is the album of the night, and I'd love to get an insight from you, because I usually talk about the artwork, and I see in the credits on the sleeve that you were behind the cover concept, so just touching on that a bit. I see a very strong reflectance in the songs and the lyrics to the actual album cover, be it with the Sign of the Times in the book and In Your Honor with the candle, just those kind of references. Can you give your insight on your concept and maybe who's depicted and what's depicted in the album cover to Erase the Slate?
Well, it's just a little boy holding a book, and he says Dokken on the book, and it's got like a Gothic cross and the candle, and it was just a way of saying, like, I don't like to get that deep into the concept and what it was. I like people to derive their own thoughts about it. The millions of people had their thoughts of what Beatles wrote about and what this song was about and what this song was about, and they find out 30 years later it wasn't about that at all. I just kind of leave it up to everybody's imagination.
Cool. Well, my imagination just led me to, once again, just thinking about the album and the overall concepts I get from Erase the Slate. It's one of my favorite releases from you, just like themes being self-reflectance and inner thought and even like religion and spirituality and stuff like that. So
yeah, there's a lot of lyrics about that in that album. It was the first record we had made after George departed once again, and Reb Beach was on guitar, and so it was a fresh start. So we thought, Erase the Slate, let's start over and let's just write whatever we want to write. And it was the last record I recorded out of my studio, because I owned a recording studio for a very long time. I had my own studio in Redondo Beach, California, and I had a really nice studio, and so we could do what we wanted, come when we wanted, leave when we wanted. We weren't on the clock. It wasn't costing any money. I was the owner, so we took long time to make that record. But the cool thing about Erase the Slate was we actually wrote it as a band. Reb came in, we went into the rehearsal room, we just jammed, and everybody come up with an idea, and we say, well, that's cool, let's try that. Or, ooh, I like that riff, let's try that. And then I'd be writing lyrics, and Mick would be writing, Jeff would be writing lyrics, and it was a very collaborative record, so it was a lot of fun. It was easy to do.
Definitely. Yeah, and I noticed looking at the Dokken discography that throughout the records there have been instances where you credit certain members to writing, but then notice, of course, with Erase the Slate, it was all just Beach, Brown, Dokken, and Pilsen. So there were definitely different parts, but with writing that all members were present on all the tracks, is that also maybe a significance of just how you guys got along back then and just how you developed music on Erase the Slate?
Yeah, Erase the Slate, I have to say, was a very collaborative record. All of us were involved, all four of us. I have to be honest, a lot of the Dokken records in the 80s, people probably thought George wrote the music and I wrote the lyrics and Jeff contributed and Mick contributed, but we didn't write that way. We just didn't. Jeff and George and Mick usually wrote what they'd write, and I wrote by myself. I kind of was off doing my own thing. So I'd come to rehearsal, this is what I got. They'd come to rehearsal, this is what we got. But George and I, honestly, we never wrote a song together. Never. He'd write a riff, and then I'd take it and turn it into a song or something, but write lyrics to it. But George and I never sat down during the days of George and Jeff. Jeff and I wrote a lot of songs together, but George and I never really sat down and wrote a song together. I know that's weird sounding, but we just didn't.
Yeah, so in a way, Erase the Slate was kind of the first time everyone worked together.
Yeah, and it was so nice and fun, and it took the pressure off of me because, like Dysfunctional is my personal favorite Dokken album. Came out in '94. That was going to be my next solo album. Then Jeff came back in the band, Mick came back in the band, and Jeff and I basically wrote the entire album of Dysfunctional by ourselves. Mick came back into the fold after he left Lynch Mob, and then George came back into the fold after the record was done, actually. Dysfunctional was finished, done, written, recorded, and George joined the band about 10 days before it was, going to be wrapped up. And the record company said, we should reach out to George, get the original members back together. So George just basically came in and we did the solos that I had done and other people. And we did some rhythm tracks, and that was about it.
Awesome.
And so that was I liked Dysfunctional because we wrote it with no rules. When I wrote Dysfunctional, it was the same as Erase the Slate. We didn't have a record deal at the time. So there was nobody telling me what I had to write, what we had to do, what it had to sound like. Because I have to be honest, these record companies, they're a little out there, They'll give me a contract and say, please make your record sound like Tooth and Nail. And I'm like, what? How do you write an album in 2017 sound like an album from 1986? It's impossible. But that's what they want.
Yeah, and I know, Don, that's kind of the dilemma you're in right now, maybe with this new album. But I also like to say that, Dysfunctional is my personal favorite Dokken release, and Erase the Slate would be a close second. So once again, Don Dokken on the phone. This is AOM on 90.7 WCLH in Wilkes-Barre. So at this time of Erase the Slate, Don, you also released a live release known as Live from the Sun, which is awesome in its own right. And watching it, I went through more of the special features on it, and I noticed a page with the gallery and that link to some original artwork by Don Dokken, and I was kind of wondering what the medium was there, and was this just a one-time thing? Because I know you've referenced a phrase that I really enjoy that you say is how you write music, and you write because that's just what you do as a songwriter, and a painter just paints. So that kind of made me think that you didn't do artwork, but then I saw that on the Live from the Sun release. So can you just talk about that a bit?
Well, the artwork I did was just I was experimenting, starting to get into computers, and I'd take photographs, and I'd take the photographs and start manipulating them and put special effects, and I'd put graphics over the photo, and I was just having fun, basically. it's what they call medium art, you know. It's special effects, graphics, pictures, all just kind of put together, and I tried to balance all the pieces to make it look cohesive. And I was just having fun. But yeah, I think music is just a painting, you know. I mean, Monet and Van Gogh and all these people, they never painted, I think, to make money. They just painted because they had to paint. They didn't paint because they go, I need money. I'm going to paint. I want $1 million for my painting. Most of those painters didn't even get, you know, famous or rich till after their deaths. But they painted because they loved to paint. I don't write songs to make a living. I don't write songs hoping I'll get money for it. I write songs because I have no choice. It's just stuck in my head. It's really stuck in my head right now. It's been several years since Broken Bones, and I have got like hours and hours and hours of ideas that I've got to get on tape or my brain's going to explode. So, yeah, writing songs is an art. But the problem with writing songs is, you know, you wake up some afternoon and I get together with John. I say, come on, John, let's go write a song. And we go, you know, fire up the Pro Tools and we start working. And sometimes it just flows right away and we're on a roll and the song happens in an hour or so. And sometimes we work for hours and get nothing. It's just frustrating, you know. And it just depends if the moon's full and what mood you're in and if you're having a good day or not a bad day. Or so that's why the writing process can take a long time. You know, you don't just go to, it's not like going to work every day and go, we're going to write a song on Monday, I'm going to write a song on Tuesday and one on Wednesday. It doesn't work that way. You know, I've had really dark times where for a month I couldn't write anything. And I don't know why. It's just, I don't feel connected with the universe. And then, unfortunately, to be honest with you, I'll just be sitting home, reading a book, watch something on TV, and somebody will say something and it'll inspire me. And then I'll just pick up my guitar and start writing.
Cool. And I'm glad that you're addicted to writing, being the big Dokken fan that I am. So here on 90.7 WCLH, it is AOM with Erase the Slate. And Don, the last song that we heard before you came on was Drown, track number 4. And I don't know if you're familiar with Reb Beach's website, but there's a lot of cool information up there about his time with Dokken, and he specifically mentioned the song Drown. What was that?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I haven't seen Reb's site. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and just, you know, it seems in terms of the Dokken discography, you know, Reb only played on the one album, but his website is actually a lot about his influence and his time working with you and the rest of the members of Dokken. And he describes in the one part about the song Drown and how it came from one of his solo albums, at least part of the melody, and that you kind of switched it up for the release.
Yeah, he had the song, and I just kind of put my touch on it, and I said, you know, can we change it like this, maybe that, and we agreed to agree, and that's how it happened. And you know, like Rep always says to me, I'll play with you anytime, Don. I love playing with Dokken, but I'll never want to make another record with you. I said, why? He goes, man, you're too intense in the studio, and I am. I can get intense. I don't mean like get all angry or all that, but I'll go 12 hours in a studio, and I'll dog a song, and it can be completely written, and I'll get it all done, and I'll say, you know, the middle of that song is just not working for me. We got to come up with something better. It's not working. And then I'll tear it apart, and I'll try to come up with something better. I'll say, come on, Red, give me something else, you know. And so it was a very tedious, I think, record for Reb. He was so used to playing with Winger and Kip Winger, and all those guys are much more talented than I am. I mean, they went to college, and they read and write music, and they, you know, they're really proficient musicians. And I'm not. You know, I learned how to play guitar in a garage, playing my guitar to records. So I'm not that, you know. Jeff Pilson, he went to college, you know, music major. So these guys are a lot more talented in that aspect. I don't read music, and I can't sight read at all. So it just comes out of my head, and it is what it is. So it was interesting. But Reb, that guy's got a million ideas. I mean, he gave me so many ideas for that record, I couldn't keep up with them.
Cool. And speaking of you kind of producing, you've produced bands such as XYZ, St. Vitus, and also a lot of the Dokken releases. And as I mentioned, Reb cites you also for helping him on Erase the Slate with telling him to just open up his guitar playing a bit to just make it rock. So I thought that was interesting as well. In terms of your producing, Don, do you find it different between producing a band, say like XYZ, and then just on the opposite end, producing your own band and working with your own members in Dokken?
Way easier. When you produce somebody and you're on the other side of the glass in the control room, I don't have an agenda, and I have nothing to win or lose. You know, I just produce a band and listen to them play and listen to their songs, and I'm kind of like the objective, you know, input. I'll say, well, that's a good song, but maybe let's try this, or let's try that. And I always tell them, you know, don't just say no. That's the way the song is. Don't mess with it. Just say, well, at least try it. Let's try this part here. Let's try to do this here. And if you guys don't like it, we won't do it. I'm just giving you guys, producers just give the musicians ideas and give objective, unbiased opinions. If they say, you know, I've had bands come in and say, we love this song we just wrote. It's great. It's amazing. It's a hit. And they'll play it for me, and I'll say, I disagree. You know, and they'll say, why? And I'll say, well, because of this and this and that, and maybe you should do this, and did you ever think about trying that? And that's what I do as a producer. When I found Great White way back in the 80s, the guy was like 1982, you know, Great White was practicing in a garage in Orange County, and I went out to see them, and I thought they had talent. So Michael Wagner, who became a very famous producer and engineer, Michael and I took Great White into the studio with a $7,500 budget and did their first record, the whole thing, for $7,500. That was out of the night. And I liked, and they were a young band, so they were very open to my input because we'd already had some fame. And that was a fun record to make because I didn't have an agenda. And it's an interesting record because if you listen to Great White's very first album, it's much heavier, much more rocking, less bluesy. You know, they kind of went down that bluesy path, you know, good time rock and roll. But their first album is more heavy and more kicking because that's what I injected into that band. But then after they got some success, I got them a record deal. They got on their way. I was busy with Dokken, so I couldn't help them anymore. And then they kind of took a different path. But I like producing. It's easy. XYZ, same thing. Two of the guys were from France. They're French. And that was a little hard for me to produce XYZ because Terry Luce had a very heavy French accent. And it was hard to get him to sing the words so I could understand them. Because you know how I sing very phonetically. I get a little annoyed when someone sings and I go, what is he saying?
Yeah.
I can't understand the word. It's all mumble jumble. I don't like singers to slur their words and kind of spit it out. That's why I like Klaus Meine. I can hear every word he sings. I understand what he's saying, even though he's German with an accent, but I understand his words. He sings very phonetic. I sing very phonetic. David Coverdale sings very phonetic, you know, Steven Tyler. But, you know, these guys sing very clearly to get the words and the storyline across. But a lot of bands, you know, like when I did XYZ, he had such a heavy accent, it was pretty difficult to get him on tape that I could understand. For the instance, they had a song called What Keeps Me Loving You, a great ballad.
Yeah.
But he kept saying Louvre. What keeps me loving you? I said, no, it's not Louvre, it's love. Louvre is a museum. Yeah. And he goes, I said love. I said, no, you said Louvre. And then we went around and around and around. And Terry said, no, I said Louvre. This is how we say Louvre in French. I said, but you're in America now, and we don't say Louvre. We don't say I love you. We say I love you. So, you know, those kind of things we went back and forth on that record. But it was fun. I enjoyed doing it. You know, I love producing because it's like I have all these musicians in front of me, and I can just kind of be the conductor and just kind of give ideas and just try to help them on their way, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And, of course, I'm definitely a big fan of XYZ, so great to hear your work in terms of their production. Once again, for anyone just tuning in, I'm on the phone with Dokken vocalist Don Dokken. Just to wrap it up, I have more of a personal question. Based on kind of what you touched on before in terms of your creativity and singing, and I know you kind of mentioned that you do have some points where the creativity doesn't really flow that well, but then you come to points where, like where you are now, that you have 20 ideas or more for this new Dokken release. Do you have any advice? I know you mentioned that you'll see something on the news and creativity will spark, but advice for maybe someone who has never been able to get a creative idea coming out in terms of music, because that's kind of where I lay in that issue.
Well, if I've learned anything in my career is, if you're writing a song, let's say you're almost 2/3 done all the way, and you hit the wall, don't force it. Just go walk away from it for a day, 2 days, 3 days. Walk away from it. Do something else. Go garden. Get on a motorcycle. Go for a ride. Go see a movie. Read a book. Just get away from it, and it always works for me. If I keep trying to force feed the song, it always never seems as good as it should have been. I walk away from a song, and I'll revisit it. Like in Dysfunctional, we had 6 songs that were recorded, but lyrically they were only half written, and I was jumping around from one song to the next song to the next song. I don't know why I work that way. I'd be working on a ballad, and all of a sudden I'd say, you know what, I just have an idea about another song that we were working on. Let's go back to that one. And we'll just take the tapes off the machine, drive the engineer crazy, say pull all the tracks, take off the tapes, put up the other reel, put that other song back on, put that back up. I'm on it, and you got to hurry up, because you're always worried as a writer that God, whatever you call it, spiritual inspiration from the universe is gonna slip right by you. So I like to get it on tape while I'm connected to the universe, as I call it, without getting too deep on all that.
Cool. And thank you. And before I wrap up the interview, I'd like to thank our good friends Neeley and Chris over at the Classic Metal Show for setting up the interview. This interview, promoting it, and being supportive of my show. And is there anything else that we missed on before we end, or anything you'd like to say to listeners of WCLH, supporters of college radio, or just the people of Wilkes-Barre?
Don't do drugs, kids.
I can get on board that. And we're broadcasting on the streets of Wilkes University. We have a new studio, so students can hear this interview out on the streets, so I hope they heard that.
Yeah, boy, well, not everybody, but a lot of people went down that road. I miss so many people in my life, so many musicians that still should be here. And, I'm writing a new song on this record right now about the evil doctors that push OxyContin and fentanyl and oxycodone, and it is an epidemic, and I'm writing a song about that right now. I think it's disgusting that doctors just care about making money, and they're killing people left and right, getting them hooked on painkillers, and it's a dead end. It'll kill you, and I want to write a song about it. So that's my only advice. I don't have really any advice. We all have to find our own way, our own spiritual path. I am still going down my spiritual path, and I still meditate, and I'm still trying to find my way. But my only advice to anybody is, life is short, and we only got one life to live, and that's just my opinion. And live it full, and keep your head clear.
Well, Don, I appreciate the advice. I look forward to the new Dokken album, and also Dokken coming to our area once again on Saturday. This Saturday, October 14th, Jim Thorpe at Penn's Peak. And I'd just like to say, Don, that when I saw you back in June and met you and we talked a bit, I remember the story you said on stage that you kind of described how you don't really get starstruck, but the one time you kind of did was when you met George Harrison of the Beatles. And I'd just like to say before you wrap this up that if I were you, then you would be my George Harrison.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that was. I have a picture of me at I had thousands of pictures from my career But my very favorite picture is a picture of me, George Harrison, and Tommy Chong all together.
Nice.
It's a great picture. It's like my favorite of memories of me and George Harrison, and Tommy Chong was there, and we were at some kind of a funny barbecue, and it was a really great memory, and thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So once again, thank you, Don, for being a part of the show, and I look forward to the concert once again on Saturday. So up next, we have track number 5 off of Erase the Slate, and that one is called Shattered. It is AOM on 90.7 WCLH in Wilkes-Barre. Keep it locked and rockin' with Dokken.